The New York Republican Party is experiencing a complete resurgence. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video. Today, it is time that we talk about the great state of New York and how the Republican Party of the state went from arguably the biggest clown show of many statewide GOPs to arguably one of the better ones in the entire country. So much so that somehow, for the first time in quite a while, we're having serious discussions about the political future of the state of New York. Now, before we continue with today's video, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Guys, just for $1 a month, you can join Real American. This is the best way to support the daily content that we all know and love. So I hope and recommend you join the channel today. Alright, everybody, and before I even forget, let me be 100% clear. I am not saying that New York is a future red state. With that being said, however, for the first time in many years, it's time to have a serious discussion about New York. Because while I don't think it's going to be magically a Republican state, I do think, especially when it comes to stuff like the national popular vote, some governor elections, and hell, even the congressional elections, it is becoming increasingly competitive, especially for governorship, the congressional seats, all of that. Which, let's be real, nobody in their right mind would have thought this even 2 years ago. Even when in New York City, we actually got the most city council seats in like 10 years or so. Even then, it's like nobody really expected much to happen. But that all changed in 2022. I mean, look at this. Trump lost the state by 23. All right? Look at Lee Zeldin. And we all know I am an enjoyer of Lee Zeldin. I believe he is the future of the GOP, or somebody that could seriously be a mantle of the GOP down the line. Look at this. He got it within 7. Or 7.5, I'm sorry. Guys, it went from Trump plus 23 to Hochul plus 7, or Biden plus 23, yeah. And before everybody says, well, that's just because Kathy Hochul is such a bad candidate that she caused the entire ticket to go down ballot. Guys, Chuck Schumer, who's been in the U.S. Senate for God knows how long at this point, guess what? He had his worst performance in over 20 years. In 2020, or I should say 2016, Chuck Schumer won by like 40. He only won by 14 this time around. I'm getting sick and tired of these people that are saying, this is just a fluke. You're telling me with a straight face, a state that went from Biden plus 23 to just Schumer plus 14 is a fluke? I mean, the implications of this is huge. Because just look at the popular vote margin. I mean, Trump lost the state by 2.2 million votes. Biden won the popular vote by 7 million or so. That's more than a quarter of the popular vote victory just came from New York. If you whittle down the popular vote margin from like New York, that alone can make it much more reasonable for Trump to potentially win the popular vote. But that's not what matters. Look at the congressional seats. And we all know this by now. The only reason we even have a House majority is because the GOP in New York, in particular, Lee Zeldin. he campaigned his ass off across the state. But also, I got to give it to the New York GOP. They had some very solid candidates across the board. Brandon Williams, Mark Molinaro, Michael Lawler, but of course the meme himself, George Santos. And yet another example of this. This is compared to 2020. Not just Long Island, which we'll get to in a second, shifted Republican. Every district in the state except the one in Buffalo shifted to the right by not just, 1 or 2 points. The least shifting Republican seat came in downtown New York. Look at upstate. It's plus 14, plus 12, plus 13, plus 8, plus 6, plus 9. I mean, you had how many flips? 1. I actually think Brandon Williams held. That was actually a Republican seat. But Molinaro won, and these are competitive seats. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 competitive House seats. Republicans won just in New York. Look at the House majority. Look at that. Those 5 seats single-handedly saved us in the House. What if all 5 went Democrat? Guess what? Democrats would have a House majority right now by 1 seat, but it's still a majority. Our entire congressional majority can be chalked up to these 5 seats. And this is why this cope that this is just a one-off. You're telling me these voters only voted Republican because Zeldin was on the ticket? You're telling me that, they only voted for Joe Pinion, who, mind you, was outfunded by like 100 times. I'm not even kidding. Who was unknown. He got the majority leader to within 14 points. One of his worst performances in his entire history in the Senate. You're telling me this is a fluke? Want to know why the Republican Party is starting to pick up steam in New York? 1, it's obviously the freaking amazing candidates. Lee Zeldin single-handedly propelled himself from being, kind of just a congressman from Long Island, but you don't really know him, to who many people want to be a future nominee for president. And look at where he did best in, and right here. He, of course, ran it up in Long Island, but it's not just there. He ran it up in upstate New York. He ran it up even in Buffalo. Compared to Trump, at least, there were areas that, compared to 2018, actually shifted leftwards. But either way, this isn't just, a fluke of turnout. Every single county from 2016 or 2020 shifted at least 6.5 points to the right. Actually, 4.5, excuse me. And when you look at the precinct data, some of the largest shifts happen even in downtown New York. And hell, even in the rural parts of the state that you wouldn't think would get much more Republican. This isn't some magical fluke. It's the GOP in New York found their messaging. They found the weakness of the Democrats. Crime. This is their frickin' kryptonite. I don't care who you are. What happened in New York City ever since Giuliani left is a travesty. He turned that city from one of the most dangerous in the world to one of the safest. Led it through 9/11. And then idiotic mayor after idiotic mayor came in and ruined it. Turned it back into a complete and total mess. And Republicans, they hammer that message. Not just, in the boonies of upstate New York. Zeldin campaigned down in the Bronx. He's campaigning in the Queens. He's not campaigning, freaking just Suffolk County or Staten Island. He's in downtown New York, freaking Brooklyn. Some of the most Democrat parts of the country. campaigning for saying, listen, look around you. This city is falling apart. And guess what? Democrats are allowing cashless bail. If I'm elected governor, I'm going to put law and order back in the streets. I mean, it worked. And this is the strategy going forward. Stop ignoring these Democrat areas. Campaign in them. Go to frickin' Brooklyn. Go to Queens. Knock on their doors and talk to them. Many of these voters have been completely abandoned by the Democrat Party. They take them for granted. It's true. They can give a rat's ass about Mexicans, Italians. They can care less, right? I'm not necessarily Italians, but you get the point. If Mexicans, if African Americans, if they voted Republican, they wouldn't give a flying F about them. They pretend they like them, so they get their vote, and then see you later in 4 years. Zeldin proved that it can backfire on Democrats. I'm not saying Brexit's real. I am saying, however, if you just talk to these people, they're not going to vote for you overwhelmingly, but just trim down the margin. You know, New York, for example, instead of losing the Bronx by 70 points, cut it down a little bit. He did. He got it down to around 54 or 56. A 14-point shift. You don't need to win New York. New York City to win New York. But you got to limit these margins down. And you can apply this in many states. Look at Nevada, which I think is actually looking pretty good for the GOP. But look at Arizona. You can't win if you get crushed in Phoenix. Many states show that. Look at Georgia. If you get crushed in Metro Atlanta, you are screwed. You are completely and utterly screwed. But this strategy of campaigning in these Democrat areas, no, just campaign everywhere. Don't pander. Talk about what's happening and how you're going to fix it. These voters, they're not going to suddenly, be 80% Republican, but a few of them may switch over. The Republican Party has an opportunity here because there's a lot of congressional seats in the state of New York. I mean, look at this. Republicans got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. If I counted that correctly, 11. 11 congressional seats just in New York. Let's go to Michigan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go to Wisconsin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just New York alone has one less congressional seat than Wisconsin and Michigan combined for the Republican delegation. This is why it is huge. If the GOP can cut down the margins from D plus 25 to D plus 15 like Joe Pinion did, you have a possibility of this, gaining a couple extra seats. But I'm just glad that New York GOP, they understand, no, this wasn't, a one-off thing. There is something happening in the state of New York. It's not going to be a Republican state, but there's a good chance that it is closer than it has been for the past, 40 years? I mean, or 20 years for sure, but when was the last time a Republican won New York? It's been decades. So we're not going to win New York, obviously, but just whittle down the margin. Whittle it down so, one, maybe you can win the popular vote and make Democrats, cry about it. But number two, bunch of congressional seats. If you get blown out by 30 points in New York, you know how many congressional seats you're losing? Even if the Democrats did 5 points better in the state of New York, we may not even have a majority right now. That's how critical New York is for Not necessarily the presidential level, though it'd be funny for the popular vote, but for down ballot races such as New York 17 with Michael Lawler. Again, I'm not saying abandon Pennsylvania, Michigan. I'm not even saying, put $100 million in New York for the presidency. However, the New York GOP, they may have a winning message here of more of like a winning formula of how you can, in a very Democrat state, put up respectable numbers. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Thank you so much. Godspeed to all of you.